Hello and welcome back to Alpha DevCon. In this session, Scott Allen and Sarah Mitchell, our Director of Customer Success, is going to be showing you about web theme building. This is a question we often get a lot about how do I build my own themes? We've shown how to do tweaks, we've shown how to do adjustments, but now we're going to take it and go straight into the hard stuff of building our own themes. And we're going to begin today with Scott Allen. So let me hand it over to you, Scott. I'm going to make you the presenter. And you should see a dialog box on your screen.
Mm-hmm.
I see Farmington right there. Perfect.
Absolutely. Hello. So as Dave was saying, we're going to dive into some of the web theme and the style changes that we did to the Farmington app that we've been using. I wanted to start by saying thank you to Sarah, though, for providing such dense information, demonstrating the creation of the apps as opposed to just show and telling. It takes a lot of work and it's not easy to do. So hats off to Sarah, and truly focused on customer success, I would say. But today we're going to be talking about the Farmington style. On screen, you should be seeing right now the Farmington app as it was before much of the styling had been put in. It's just got the logo here, and if you log in, you can see that the mapping function is already in, but the style on the tabs and the buttons on the left, it's all blue colors and not matching where I, as the client or designer, really wanted the style to go. So based on that, I came up with a brand guidelines that show how the style should be handled. You as a developer may receive something like this from a client or from a designer that you're working with on a project, and how to interpret that into your web theme is really kind of what we're covering today. So as you see here, this is the logo. There's some notes about how the logo is to be used, or how the logo font should be used in if the logo isn't present. But really, the most important information is colors and fonts and things such as that, and a great place to start when you're building your web theme. So one of the things that Sarah will demonstrate probably is updating the Sass variables with much of this information. And so if you were to receive something like this from a client and or designer, you could easily translate what is going to be a background color or an active button color or other things from notes such as this, and apply those hexadecimal values into the Sass variables. Apart from that, there's also fonts. With fonts that we used for Alpha Slab 1 and Varela Round primarily. Conveniently, those are both Google fonts. If you had some kind of font given to you by a client that was like an Adobe font or something like that, that's a little more challenging because they're a premium font. But these Google fonts are very easy to get, very usable. And I'll demonstrate real quickly how we would do something like that. So Alpha Slab 1, for example, just search on Google Fonts, Alpha Slab 1, there it comes up. And you could download the family and make it usable on your machine locally, which I do for my design purposes. But maybe you want to use the style in the application, in which case you would go down to select the style. It would pull up the selected family right here. Let me dismiss this. Now you'll start to see some code down here on the bottom right. Switch it over to import, and this is the code you want to grab. Copy it, and you can paste it into your web theme for getting to access that font. All right. And then the other thing that we added were some icons. I grabbed some icons from icon8.com and downloaded them. These are we used SVG icons. I really prefer using SVG icons as much as possible. and SVG graphics in any way that I can, just because they're infinitely scalable, so usable if you're going to be transitioning from full screen formats to web on web, or then to mobile formats where you have smaller screen sizes, and you need some kind of images that expand easily. I really recommend SVGs for that purpose. So, and I think that's about it for me. I guess I can show you here quickly the buttons and tabs. This is also more information that I provided to Sarah as for ways that we might want to go with modifying the style, and if you were to receive information such as this from a client or a designer, translating these border radius and or drop shadow pixels and axis offsets and or colors for various different sets of selected, hover, or unselected, those are all things that are easily changed in the web theme via a copied style or a modified sub theme, multiple ways of doing it. So, and on that, Sarah, why don't you take it from there?
All right, I can do that. Thank you, Scott. And you should be able to see my screen now.
We can.
Awesome. So Scott set up Farmington and what we're going to look at in terms of implementing that as a as a web theme. But I wanted to talk briefly before we got into that about web themes and alpha and what they are and what they aren't. So Alpha Anywhere, the alpha theme, the alpha rows, all of those that you can select in the style picker, those are web themes, and they're simply a collection of Sass, which is syntactically awesome style sheets, CSS, images, web fonts if you've included them with your theme, as well as some JavaScript and JSON that describe how the whole theme goes together, and that's used to style your web and mobile controls in your apps. So here's what like if you go and dig into your web project in the CSS folder, that's where you're going to find web themes if you've made one. Here's the stuff you're going to find in there. There may be some images that were auto-generated. You're going to see these CSS, Sass, and JSON files, and then there's going to be a folder for icons and another one that's called tweaks. Tweaks are only there's only going to be anything in tweaks if you've created a style tweak. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about full web themes. And we're going to look at using the web theme builder instead of trying to go through the UX, CSS, or anything like that. And we're just going to start from scratch and move on from there. So this is a picture of the web theme builder. And it's got two tabs in it. One's adjust and one's code. And these two tabs have very different purposes. Adjust is where you can go in and edit some of the exposed Sass variables, which I'll explain later about what that is, and we'll take a look at one. You can access your color palettes from there, and you can see a preview of the entire web theme and all the parts that are in it. The code tab itself is where you go and customize all the code for everything. It's where you can create and edit the sub-themes, where you can apply a wrapper class, which is it's a preview mechanic where you can say, wrap the preview in the panel header class, and then it'll show you the control as if it was placed inside a panel header. You can modify your icons there. And you can also access the placeholder syntax, which is something that some of you may know about, but it's a really powerful way to include your styles in your application layouts without having to know what the CSS classes that are being used. So there's this whole placeholder syntax in Alpha Anywhere that you can take advantage of. Web themes themselves are composed of parts, and they're found or listed in the map section on the code tab. And these parts are either components or controls in your app. They're not the whole application. So if you go and look at something like the material design specification, it has sections talking about the grid and spacing and that kind of stuff. You don't really have that level of control here in the web theme. What you're really styling and what you're changing are the controls themselves. The spacing happens in your UX component or your grid where you're laying everything out. Now you can include stuff like margins and padding in your control definitions, and that will affect the spacing, but in terms of laying it out in your app, that's happening in your layout. And there's a link down here to the style sheet builder documentation where you can go and learn about all these different parts. We're not going to go through them individually because that would take an hour. There is one part that I want to point out that's special, and it only exists in a theme, not an inherited theme, not in a style tweak, and it's called the general part. And the general part is general settings for the whole theme. It's where you can specify font or class names basically for all the text, headings and links and highlighted text. It's also where you can specify all the icons that are included in your theme that you want to use. Each part in a subtheme, or okay, so each one of these web theme parts can have subthemes. Every single part has one subtheme, base theme. This is the default theme that's used to apply to whatever that part is. There are some parts that you can create subthemes for, but there currently isn't an easy way to assign that subtheme to your app. An example of this would be the UX component. You can create a subtheme for the UX component part, but I didn't see a place in our builder to specify a UX subtheme on a whole. So keep that in mind. There may be a few limitations here and there. But as far as for all the other controls that are in there, buttons, your tabs, panels, and windows, you can create as many subthemes as you want to create different looks within your app. So button is often the example we use because it's the one that you see the most variation of in an application. Applications typically have several different styles for buttons. To have one style where the button is prominent because that's where we want the user to click. Another style where it's there, but it's kind of set back and subtle because it's like a secondary action, but it's not the primary action that people might take. So an example of that would be your submit button to enter your username and password to log in. That might be a primary setup, but your I forgot my password button might just look like a link or a more subtle grayed out, might have a border or something like that. So that's a difference. But you can also, create different looks for tabs, for your panel cards, for your windows that you use, and so on and so forth. Within the web theme builder itself, I just wanted to point out there's a few tools, hotkeys, tips here and there that I think you should definitely look at using because it will save yourself time in the long run. One of those being the color palette. We're going to look at how to set up a color palette today, how to use your stats variables, Control F to find things, where to find the path for a theme setting, and how to use wrapper class. All of these things will help you in the not only build your theme, but apply it to the rest of your application, particularly with path and being able to use placeholders to reference your classes to get the same look and feel in various places where you might have added custom HTML. There's one more piece you need to know about, and this is a little bit hidden, but it's also not because we've been talking about it a lot more lately. There's a class that gets applied to a div that's wrapped around controls in the layout for UX components, and it's called A5CW layout. And what this does is it adds some padding. And this is the code that I extracted out of the Chrome debugger today. I just wanted to see where is it defined and what are we creating for it right now. And what we're creating for it is it has a padding value, it has a float value, it defines some box sizing. And then there's also another section where we're assigning some display inline block and not floating it at all if it's inside of a container that's been aligned center, left, or right. The padding itself can be set in the component properties. There's a setting for that. But if you don't want to include this on your controls, you have to override it for individual controls. And there's a setting, it goes like no float container, or possibly the container class that gets assigned to it that you can change. So if you've never made a theme before, you have no experience doing this, I highly recommend that you just copy the alpha theme and start from that, because alpha themes are going to have examples in it already that you can use to work from to develop your own theme. And that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to implement some of the branding guidelines that Scott has provided for us into that theme. All right, so I have already set up in this workspace, I've got this project called Web Theme in the Farmington, and I've created a copy of Alpha. I'm calling it Alpha Copy for now, but we can rename it later when we're done. And I've already set this up with a few little changes because these changes can be tedious and time consuming. And that change is primarily just I've gone in and I've already set icons. So to create this, what I did was I went to More, Open Web Style Builder. I picked the system style. I picked Alpha. I clicked OK. I made a local, and then I renamed it. I'm going to cancel out of here. And one of the change that I've already made is I've set up the icons for that. So general part being a special place is where you can specify the icon set for your theme, and these icons are included in the files themselves. They're embedded into the project files, and this is the icon set. You can go look at it. So I've got a bunch of SVG icons that I've added. They're the ones that Scott provided, and they're in my icon folder. And I'm using this pattern match. It says it's in the icons subdirectory, and everything that ends with SVG is what should be included in the icon set. It's been prefixed with Farmington. And then it's got two classes here, icon and icon disabled. These are the default classes applied for the icon when it's inserted. And that's an artifact from the alpha theme itself. And I've gone through and I've set up all of these icons, and there's a lot of them in here. So general, here's showing the ones I've added for general, but if we go and look at adjust and scroll down through here, like here's the icons that we've added in for the icon records for our grid, including all these drop downs and these filters here, a few here in the UX, some on the tabbed UI base, and so on and so forth. So to change all of these, you need to come in here and pick one for each one of these properties, and then go through and make sure you've caught them all. And for some of these, it's quite extensive. So this can take a bit of time, but I just wanted to show you what this could look like with your own icons, which is a change that doesn't seem like much, but it can add quite a bit to your application. So now that I've got those icons in place, we can start looking at the brand. And we're not going to worry about the logo here, and we're not going to worry about this either. This would be something I would control on the layout itself to figure out this F spacing. There isn't a CSS term that I could find or size that I could find that would let me say half of an F in terms of width. So I would have to kind of figure that out by hand if I wanted to be give the minimum padding on this. I'm realizing this is really tiny. But other stuff in here, like colors, these are the colors that we want to use within our app, and they're going to be used all over the place. And to get started with this, I'm going to add those into my theme, but I'm going to do it first by creating a color palette. I'm trying to move the GoToWebinar controls. Okay, so on the Adjust tab, there's some SAS variables that have been exposed. These are defined here in the code, and it's really anything that has this CSS comment after it. That's going to be, it's going to appear here. But if you click this little drop-down arrow, it opens up a color picker. And something that I don't know if very many people use it, but I find to be insanely useful is this palette. Because the palette lets you quickly define a whole bunch of colors that you might be using all the time, and then choose from that as opposed to trying to remember what that hexadecimal value was. So I'm going to very quickly put in all the colors that Scott provided into this palette. Here we go. So we'll add this one, and I'll pick a new palette. We'll call it Farmington. Add it. I don't know why this is doing this. I think I might have messed this up a little bit, copying mine out earlier.
Perhaps a name that isn't used already.
Oh, it doesn't have one at all. Oh, that's what I need to do. There we go. So here's Farmington. And then to add the colors in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the value in here, and then I'm going to click this plus button. So that's added this color that I've added right here into the palette. And I can go through and add the rest of them really quickly here by putting them in there and then clicking plus. And I find this to be very very useful. The palette appears to be saved with Alpha Anywhere. So if I go and open up another app or another web project, I'm going to see this palette in it. So if you're someone who creates a lot of applications for the same company and they've got a specific brand, and you're using the same colors over and over again across multiple projects, setting this up will save you a lot of time, because you're going to be able to access this really anywhere. You can add a color in Alpha Anywhere. So this is our, now that our color palette is set up, we can start looking at the rest of the theme. Oops, I didn't want to change the foreground. I think it was black before. So if I can find out where I put that PDF, I'm going to look at the sample stuff that Scott's provided, and I've already built this app, so I know what these parts are. So I know where I need to go to update them. But if you haven't built out an app, maybe you've gotten a layout here. The first thing you need to do is identify the controls in that mockup before you can start styling them. Because if you don't know what that control is going to be, you're not going to know where you need to go change things. But right here we've got a few things. So I know this here is a panel with a list in it. It's actually it's a panel navigator that's been rendered as tabs. Then over here on the side is another panel. So it seems to me like this panel background is the thing that needs to change in my layout. And the other thing that needs to happen as well is that these buttons, our default buttons, need to have this rounded corner, and the background color and the fonts need to change, and some of the behaviors as well. So we have our selected, our hover, and our unselected examples here. So Scott has kindly provided some information for me here. Like they have a 4-pixel border radius, they have a drop shadow, and they're using the Varela round. So one of the next things I think that I need to do before I can do that is actually get those fonts in there, because they're being used in this layout. And those fonts that Scott has specified are available on Google Fonts. I've already gone and gotten the import for that. But for this, all I need to do is go to the code tab and add that import code. And I like to, whenever I'm editing, starting with something new, I like to come down here to the bottom of everything that's already in here. Yeah, Alpha Anywhere, the, but not keyframes. Down past this tab flare size is a new one that we added recently, but add my own modifications here to include it, and then start making my changes. So, I need to close this. we have two fonts in here. The main body font, mixed case, body text, letter spacing. This is, the Varela round is the one that needs to be used basically for every single font throughout the theme, with the exception of some of our headers. So if we go to general, yeah. We have a few things that we need to change here, particularly these blue colors that you see here. We also need to change the font just generally for the whole application. And this font here in the variables that's set up in the alpha theme is the whole font for the entire application. So if we wanted to change this to use the Varela round, we could just add it here after we've added our Google import to import the font. And now that font's in our theme, we've got our Varela round. Now, you do want to specify a few fallback options. It's called a font stack, and you may be given one, you may not. If the font can't load for some reason, or you've accidentally spelled it wrong, then it's going to fall back to something else. And if you don't define something else, the browser will pick it for you. So that's changed our font. Want to do some highlighted text and the links. The link colors are specified in that document. I believe it is text links here on a green background, but we've got a general link on a white background that we're looking at. So we're going to take this color and change that. So we'll go over here, we'll click on link, which is going to show us this path thing down here. And what this is telling me is everything that I've selected, what I've clicked on here. This is everything that's being applied to it. If I click on highlighted text, I get highlighted class name is the thing. And if I click on that, it's going to highlight over here on the side what that property in the general settings is. It might be blank. For example, text class name doesn't have a class, but it does take me to that property if I wanted to apply something to it. So we want to go to the link class name, and we see that link is applied here. And if I use Control F, it's going to jump in the style, the code here, directly to that first instance of link. And here I can see that the alt accent color is being used. So I could, if I wanted to, either go change the alt accent color at this point and make it that yellow, which we could try, or I could add a new Sass variable that has that color specifically for this use case. So we can start with looking at the alt accent color, and unfortunately these are named differently from the UI, but if I Control C and Control V this, up here we see that it's this Sass variable here, and it's the alternate accent color used in the theme. We could try changing it here, which we will do, just so you can see what happens. And we want this orange. If we scroll through here, we're going to see everywhere that that color has affected our system. So we see here that, one, it's affected our menu bar, which these aren't the right colors for our menu bar. And it's also affected our buttons, which we can see here. So that's not correct. Our buttons actually need to be a green color. So this isn't the appropriate place to change this. So instead, what I'm going to do is make a different Sass variable with that color. So we'll call it link alt. And then I'm going to insert a color and pick it from my color picker and click OK. Now that I have that, I can come back over here to link, jump down to it. Instead of using alternate accent color here, I can insert that new variable I just made, which is down here at the bottom of this list. And so now our links will be the right color that we want. I have, let's see here. I've put together SAS variables already for the rest of these things so that they're easy to reference. Come down here. And this is the yellow that we just created. So here's a few other colors. Here's that green that we created earlier. That's this shade of green here. The accent, I believe, is all backgrounds. This one, and so on and so forth. All the different colors that we need out of our style sheet. And what I'm going to do now is just go through and apply them where I need them. So we'll just go take a look at button and button base. So here our default button needs to be this rounded square. The background needs to be this yellow. The foreground, or sorry, the foreground, the font color needs to be that pale yellow. The background needs to be that green. Hover state's a slightly different shade of green. And then this final state says unselected. I'll have to ask Scott about that, what he means as we apply it, because unselected isn't, I think maybe he meant hover. Scott, did you mean hover?
The hover is, I meant sort of, I guess, if it has, I think pressed is sort of what I mean by selected.
All right, so selected, okay.
So that is selected, and then pressed.
Oh, okay, so this is pressed, this is hover, and this is default.
There you go.
All right, gotcha. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at button. I know that in here, button primary kind of does already what I want. So we can go look at see how button primary, this has happened before, implements color. Button primary, I believe there's a plain one in here. This might take a little bit of searching at first, but oh, there's a comma. I apologize, I didn't see the comma. So here's this right here is the definition for button primary, and that seems like a good place to launch from because it's got the color stuff. So we can go back to base and apply that here, so that our background colors will always be filled, and then change how that looks. So I'm going to take button primary off of this. I am going to copy this real quick. And then I'm going to take this selector out and define it up higher. All of the button CSS in these web things is going to be grouped together, so you don't need to go looking too much for it. So we want the background to be our green, dark green, whoop, not deny header. And our foreground color to be that yellow, I think, or did you want it, you wanted white? Here we go. And then we need to take care of this hover, pressed, and disabled. So let's go find hover. And if we take a peek here, hover was our light gray, or not light gray, light green, which was this guy here. I've named it disabled background, but oh, and I need to set that on the background, not
the one that was just
color.
above that color green, but
You want to go right about it, yeah.
But it's close.
And then the color white.
This is the one I think you named alt background.
The what?
The color of the button is the one, the hover button is the one you labeled alt background.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting distracted. That one. Button pressed. And I think the rest of the button primary stuff is messing this up. So I'm gonna go comment it out because it's further down. Can I do that here? I cannot.
Another quick solution to that challenge is also to put all of your edits at the bottom of the CSS.
That's true, yeah. Take out all this button primary stuff here. Okay. Text color, text background. Where we were on hover. There's hover, and then pressed is the dark green again. With the yellow. And I keep getting background and color reversed. So move that down there. And I believe it's this one. There we go. So there's our button hover pressed. And then we could also change the color for disabled if we wanted to. It's not specified. We probably should make it a gray color. So we can go look at that. Button not active. Pulse. Okay, that's pulse stuff. Not finding it particularly quickly. Oh, here it is. Well, let's make that gray for now. Or disabled background.
Yeah, you got to find the background color, not the color.
I know. I think I'm gonna keep making that mistake all day.
I make it too, honestly.
Yeah, and we'll just make that the white instead. So there's our disabled state. This is our base. All of our buttons will look that by default. However, I mentioned earlier that there's this thing called wrapper class. So this handles our button case, but it doesn't necessarily handle our buttons inside of panel headers or windows. In fact, window buttons are defined separately from this. So if you wanted to take this a step further and look at how this would appear if it was placed in the panel header, you can add, if you spell it right, panel header. And I already know that this is the class name we apply to panel headers. If you don't know that, you can get it out of the map by looking at the panel header. But this is what it's going to look like here. And so like as a final step, we could go find panel header and figure out where those button settings are being applied. And this is all done using Sass. So Sass has this cool thing where you can nest your definitions. So here's an example here. If we had the compact theme on a panel header, like the line height gets changed to the C size, making it shorter. But this definition here, it's compact, and then here's our panel header information. So here in this section is edit overrides. I don't see button in there. Here's more compact on edit overrides. Edit group. Edit background. Compact settings. Here we go. Button. Here is, these are going to be wrapper classes that get applied to things that have a button assigned to them. So if you put a button control inside of a panel header, it's going to be assigned these properties. And we don't want the color to be this blue color. And instead, we want it to be that yellow color that Scott provided earlier, that pale yellow. So that is, that did not insert the right, did that insert the right variable? Yeah, it did. Okay. So we want color yellow here, but we also want to change it here. Or not there, sorry. That's the contrast. Here. Header and stroke, we can look at that later. Border color. Probably want these all to be the same. And it looks like there's one more place that it's probably being set. So we need to keep looking for it. No color here. Confirm, deny. That's button disabled. Button pressed. I'm sure this part is very riveting for everyone. I'm going to look for a button to see if there is another place that we missed. Button primary. Icon padding. There we go. There we go. I found it.
Huzzah!
Yeah, so this can take some time to get through and add this, but these other pieces, the hover, the button hover, button press, these other things that you need to change in here, these are going to be like the border bottom is going to be the thing that sets that affects that color. So you can come in here and if you find them, change them out. Now, if you've got sub themes that you're not using that you don't want to use, I do recommend that you delete them. So for example, probably have no plans to use all these capsule raised, subtle raised, that kind of stuff. So in our final theme, what we would want to do is come through here and just take them out. Because we're not going to use them in our web theme, in our app. So there's no point in keeping it in here because it's just going to make it more difficult to find things. And all of this, getting through this stuff as you decide, isn't fast and isn't quick. Scott did mention earlier that you can add stuff to the bottom. And in CSS, and this is also true of Sass because it compiles to CSS, the last rule that gets loaded is the rule that gets used. So if we wanted to do something and go take a look at let's go take a look at our tabs next. And let's get rid of the panel header up here. So, I don't want tab band. I want tab. Tab is used if the panel card is rendered as a tab, and the things that we want to change here are changing this background and all that good stuff. So we can get there quickly, testing to validate that what we're changing is right by figuring out what these items are and overriding them at the bottom and then later integrating them into the rest of the theme. So this is a good way to test things. So we want the tab band, which is this whole box, that entire box area. We want that background on that to actually be a pale gray color, or not. I keep saying gray, it's green. So if we grab the alternate background that we had created earlier and add that, so that's going to be our background for this tab band. As for the rest of the items, the tab itself, individual tabs need to be a different color. So if we come down here and look in,
I hate to be confusing about it, but I do think it's actually the other light green, the most light green color.
well, we're gonna stick with this one for now.
That's fine.
Yeah, and I'll make that change when we're done. So you've got, Scott's got, when it's selected, it needs to have the dark green with the yellow text. When you hover over it, it needs to be a slightly lighter shade, which we've just picked for our background. And then if it's not selected at all, it needs to be the same color as the background, which is no background. So let's change this one to that other one. Colors, this one. And then also take a look at these ones. So a tab item is going to be the thing that's it. It's just a regular, like all the tabs are going to have a tab item on them. And for these ones, if it's not selected, the color of the font needs to be white. So that resolves that case. If it's selected, which we click here and go over here, we see that that class name was tab item selected. Let's come down the line here. Now we'll click out of that. That needs to be that dark green background with the yellow logo color. Okay. And then on hover, which isn't actually defined here, we want to have a different behavior. So right now, if you hover over something, it makes it blue. And I think if we go look at tab item hover, it's using the hover selector and not a separate class name like we saw for the button. So the buttons get a class applied to them, but the tabs are using this hover pseudo class, which is a CSS concept. So we're going to take that out, go all the way down to the bottom. There we go. And add our own rule here. So we want it to be
alt background
and white, right?
Yes.
Text color and alt background. There we go. So now when you hover over it, you see that behavior. So that's our tab. This is gonna automatically apply to our panels when they're styled as a tab now, so we don't have to worry about trying to get that in there. And we changed the base theme, so it's gonna affect all of them. Now the next step would be to go in and integrate this into the theme itself and take out the bits that you're not gonna be using. There are a few other places you might want to look at. So if you're going to use tabs on the bottom, the left, and the right, you want to check these to make sure that the style stuff that you've specified is going to apply. Flared is going to be blue because we didn't change the flared colors, but those are defined using CSS. Not CSS. I believe they're just. I believe the tabs are. The flare is defined using the SAS themes, the tabs themselves are using different colors. So if we went and found them, you'd have to change this stuff here, the bottom color, the tab, the for color, and so on and so forth. We're not
Yes,
using
sir.
flare
You
tabs
have
in Farmington.
you asked me to say when they were 10
Yep.
minutes, and they're
Yep.
10 minutes. Okay.
Awesome. So you can see if we come down to those sections, you can start to see how this is feeding in here. So some other stuff that I see in Scott's theme here that is more generally applied are these hover colors. So if we look at this data, these things here, these hovers, these background colors are being applied to things like the grid and the list using the core accent color. And if we wanted to just change everything all at once, certainly changing the color itself would do that very quickly. So one change here changes your whole theme. We've gotten rid of that blue color there. And we can do the same thing for our alternate accent if we wanted to also use the same green color in those situations. So that's starting to apply to the whole thing. Another piece I wanted to take a look at was window. It's not in Scott's theme, but it did come up when we were designing things, and that was to make this title section different color. So that area here is the window title class. So we could take that whole thing and apply its own background. Oop, I didn't copy it. Fortunately, the name's right there. Background. And make that color our white text. And so that gives us our title. Here's our close buttons. You'll notice that the buttons here are different, and that's because the window buttons are actually defined separately from the button part. We added button primary, so by simply adding that here, it adds all the modifications that we added earlier to cover the changes here. So that's going to give us the exact same look in both places. I wanted to talk a bit about parts. We haven't touched on this yet. So if we go and we look at, let's go look at a list, because this is going to be the sort of like the main place where you're going to see this a lot. Excuse me. There we go. Give it a freeform layout. And then the list layout. In these predefined templates, they all have a very specific style, but that style is actually defined in the web theme if you want to override this. And when you insert one of these, you're going to see all this stuff in the class. And this is placeholder text. This can be inserted from, let's see here, from one of these places. Maybe not. I'm looking at the wrong place. I'm not seeing it here. There used to be a link. It might be on the view box, but there's a way to insert them from the editor in some places from the theme. But if you don't know what they are, you can actually just looking at this, go and check it out. So this is in like list box base item parts content class name. So if we come over here and we look at our list, this is window. So we have list item, base. Let's go back and look real quick. It's a very long name. There you go. This item base item, which is item parts subclass name. This is list base item part subclass name. So this is the class that gets applied to that template. You can change all those templates here quite easily versus entering CSS in the list itself and then having to copy that around. So in one place you can change that. There, I don't think we have a preview for that in here, which might be something we might want to consider. So I'm probably wrong. Ah, here it is. So here are the individual parts. Here's that main part. This is that main. Here's sub, here's content, context, and detail. If you wanted detail, for example, to be green instead of gray on the background, you could come in here and change that and give it a different background color. So now that's going to be dark green, and that's going to apply to everywhere that you've used that template and anywhere that you use that part. All of these parts down here have this path thing that you can use with that theme bracket syntax and insert it into various places throughout your application. It doesn't just have to be an inline HTML place. It can also be the class name in the class name settings. So something to keep in mind when you're building stuff out. It could make your life easier because you can utilize these class names in places where you may not be able to access them directly. So we've built a significant part of the Farmington web theme. And I'm gonna pull it open here just to show you where we're going with it. And we made a number of decisions. So we changed our header, some of our colors here, which we've already shown how you could do that, to apply throughout this whole theme. So our header and footer and stuff like that, and our panels changes. Notice some of these still don't have the background colors from Scott's new branding guidelines because they haven't been put in here yet. But we did look at changing font sizes for some of these things in the header up there. I don't think we put them down here in the list. But the list columns, change the colors here, change the colors on our icons so they matched better in here. Which didn't have to happen in this definition itself. We actually just changed the icon class itself. So the fill on it is that alt text color, and that's what changes the fill here. The other thing we did is we applied that on the general. We have this heading now uses a different font. And if we look at heading, there we go. Here's the font family is actually using this, it's a Sass variable, but it defines the fonts that we wanted to use in this case, and that's going to be your alpha slab. And that was set up here. Again, here's our import URL stuff. Something that we are experimenting with is going as far as defining the entire thing. So the alt header font thing this is meant to replace the text for the font command on CSS. So you do font : and then you can define a whole range of stuff, including color, font weights, and your font stack. And by specifying this here, we can change it throughout the whole theme everywhere it's used.
Awesome.
So that's getting started. Now, to show changing an entire theme, building from scratch in a webinar is very ambitious. It's gonna take a lot of time. Like this is work that you're looking at, but the payoff that you get on the back end is that you can have all sorts of different projects. And if we'll go look at the login here and we look at the properties, they're all using this global SaaS theme, Farmington. We built it once. We put it in the global space, which is actually stored further up in the project, which I can show you where that's at. But we can work on that and use it in all of our projects. Here we go.
Terrific.
Shared
Yeah, that was
resources, CSS, Farmington. So this is in shared resources with the web projects, is where that's saved. But we can keep working on this to get it to where we want it to be. And our projects can just be developing and placing icons, and we don't have to worry about the CSS in those because we're capturing it all in our theme as we build it.
very cool.
So I do want
Sarah,
to open it up for questions in the last
okay,
second
well,
that
we're
we
just
have.
about out of time, but the big question, well, there are a couple, but the big question is, yeah, where does this stuff get saved? And I know you just showed it to us, but if you could
Yes.
show it again in a Windows Explorer.
Yeah. So shared resources is where global themes go, but
Okay.
local themes are stored in your project workspace. So if we come back in here and we go back to web theme, that's all being stored. That alpha copy that I made, and also this little Farmington local rename that I made, that's stored within the project itself. And the intent of this workspace only is just to develop our theme and then have that in GitHub and then only copy it into the global space before publishing.
Oh, okay.
This
I gotcha.
particular project,
Thanks.
this workspace. So
Excellent.
before anybody asks, everyone will get all these files when we're done. So
Excellent. I knew they're going to ask anyway,
yeah.
and they have.
Yeah. So I hope you guys got some use out of this, and I apologize for going a minute over.
Oh, yeah, no problem at all. Listen, if you do have more questions, and I suspect you might, go ahead and send them to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com, and we will be happy to get back to you with the answers. Sarah and Scott, thank you very much for presenting. We appreciate it. Our next session is coming up at, looks like 2:45, about 30 minutes from now, and it will be dealing with Cordova plugins. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.